All right, so let's talk about what happened before the fight on Friday night. A couple of hours before the main event started, Sandy Ryan was leaving her hotel in Midtown to go over to Madison Square Garden. Sandy Ryan's hotel was on 27th Street in Manhattan, Madison Square Garden on 33rd, 34th, and 8th Avenue. So just a handful of blocks. As she left her hotel, someone approached her and threw a can or a bucket of paint at Sandy Ryan that hit her and spread paint kind of over the lower part of her midsection and all down, I believe it was her right leg. This unknown assailant then hopped into a car that was waiting for her, so there was another driver, and sped away, got away from Sandy Ryan and from the people that were there. This is crazy, Keith. This is one of the crazier stories that I can remember covering in quite some time. Now, Sandy was not injured as a result of this attack, but she did have to go back up to her room to change. She posted some photos on there, like that paint got onto her skin. She had to wash that off. People might say, look, that's nothing, no big deal. But okay, if you're a fighter or a professional athlete and you're in a certain frame of mind hours before your fight, and someone comes up to you and does something like that to you, that's going to mess with your head. That's going to get underneath your skin. Not to say that made a difference in the outcome of this fight, but that was certainly something I thought that affected Sandy. We saw in the interview she did before the fight, she was obviously a little bit rattled. There were reports that members of her team actually wanted her to call off the fight and say, don't go through with it in the aftermath of this attack. As from what I know, Matchroom, Sandy Ryan, they have spoken with NYPD. NYPD has been provided with the CCTV footage from the hotel. There was also some footage in the lobby that I guess Matchroom and Sandy Ryan's team wanted the police to ultimately see. What do you make of what happened on Friday before the fight, and what do you think is going to be the fallout from this?
As you said, Chris, one of the strangest things we've ever encountered in both of us covering the sport for a very long time. It was just odd because when we first heard about it, we started hearing things like, oh, we think it was a PETA protest. I'm like, well, what does Sandy Ryan have to like? She wearing a fur coat? Like, I don't understand what so she and her team have certainly intimated that it was someone from Mikaela Mayer's team. I don't know anything about that. Mikaela Mayer was asked about that in the post-fight press conference. She said, obviously, I wouldn't do something like that. It would look just from the outside looking in, whoever did it, I mean, could have cost the fight. It could have cost them the fight because if the paint goes in her eye, God forbid, or something like that, it could have, made her withdraw from the fight. And it was certainly unnerving to her, as you said, Chris, because even though she wasn't injured, that's not a normal occurrence. I mean, that's a very odd thing to happen. And you start worrying about your safety and what's going on here. And you start maybe getting a little paranoid as you're getting close to the opening bell. Yeah, I mean, it definitely threw her off a little bit. I don't know that it necessarily, if once the bell rings and someone's trying to take your head off, well, then you are obviously going to be fully focused on that task at hand. You're not going to be thinking, oh, well, someone threw paint on me 2 hours ago. I'm sure, I don't mean during the fight, but leading up to the fight, maybe she wasn't, within that hour, well, by the time the fight started, it was probably 4 hours later, but
Yeah.
it was quite just, you got some time to think about it, I guess. But, during that time when you would normally be in the frame of mind to fight, they're suddenly worrying about this and it takes your focus off of what you're supposed to do. So, yeah, I mean, it could have impacted her in that way. Very unfortunate incident. I mean, I hope they get to the bottom of it. I don't want to cast any aspersions or so. I have no idea what happened. It's just very odd. Thankfully, she was not injured in any way. And a credit to her, she's hopefully never going to encounter something like this again. And she came and fought about as well as she could have fought and put
Mhm.
on one of the fights of the year when she very easily could have been thrown off track. And she feels like she won. And there, I could certainly make the argument that she might have done enough to eke it out. So I give her a lot of credit for having the fortitude and the resilience to kind of go through that and fight the way that she did.
Yeah. To add something to that, all around the Madison Square Garden area and in the hotel, there were these printouts of of Sandy's face, and on these printouts were, and I have a copy of one somebody sent me on my phone, basically calling Sandy a whore is what one of them says. This was a targeted attack. This was a deliberate act aimed towards Sandy Ryan. This wasn't mistaken identity. This wasn't this was a specific targeted attack of Sandy Ryan. And I for the life of me, I obviously, we don't know why right now. Sandy believes it was someone involved with Mikaela's team. Mikaela, as you mentioned, very adamant. She knew nothing about what happened with that incident. It strikes me, Keith, and we're recording this on Sunday night, and we don't know a lot of the details yet, but it strikes me that this is probably something the NYPD is going to get to the bottom of, right? Like, if you have some CCTV footage from the incident itself, and if there actually was a car driving away, well, a lot of cameras in New York City, right? A lot of opportunities to get that license plate. And something tells me whoever did this is not a master criminal. So I have a feeling, and I've tried to talk to as many people as I can over the last 12 hours to see where they're at. But I have a feeling that there's going to be, this story's not over. Like, this is not going to be a story that just disappears in the next 3 or 4 days. I know Matchroom is going to push hard. And look, maybe if this type of thing happened to somebody else, it wouldn't be a priority. But this did happen to an international boxer who was fighting at Madison Square Garden. So I believe that this is something that the police are going to diligently investigate and see if they can get to the bottom of it. Because there's no doubt that this was a targeted attack of Sandy Ryan. Again, I've seen a lot of people say, and I use the word attack on social media. That's what it was, okay? That's what it was. Like, not all attacks are created equal here, but that's exactly what it was. And again, if you think that a professional athlete having that happen to them hours before they're primed and ready to go for this event they've been training months for, if you think that doesn't have an impact, you just don't know enough about professional athletics. So this is going to be a developing story, I think, for a while. I think we're going to learn a lot about it in the days and weeks ahead.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there, Chris. It's bizarre, as we mentioned at the top of this. It's a bizarre situation. I'm still, like, a little less than 48 hours later, I'm still sort of stunned that it happened. It's just because I don't even know what the purpose of it is, really. I mean, if you're trying to hurt someone, you're not going to hurt someone by throwing paint on them, so what? I don't, it's just very strange.
I mean, this was one of those situations, Keith, where you touched on the issues that Mikaela Mayer had with her now former trainer, Kay Karoma, who is, during this camp, was part of the team of Sandy Ryan. Was not in his corner. Another trainer was in that corner. But there was a lot of people that were fired up over all this. People from different gyms in the Vegas area that were fired up over all this. So I don't know if someone, and I don't want to speculate because I don't know anything concrete about it, but there was a lot of bad blood, not just between Sandy and Mikaela and her former trainer, but there was a lot of bad blood between a lot of people going into that fight.
Yep. Yeah, I agree, Chris. I know this is the tact you're taking as well. I just don't think it's responsible for me to speculate on any of this because I don't know. And hopefully, there are paid professionals in New York who clearly at this point in New York City have many more important things to worry about than who threw a gallon of paint on a professional boxer. But hopefully they'll do their jobs and get to the bottom of what happened, because it's not right and it shouldn't have happened. And look, the one thing I would say is if they fight again, I do know that Mikaela Mayer will gladly go over to the UK and fight Sandy Ryan. She has told me that she has wherever the money is, that's where she's looking to go. She's 34 years old. She has some leverage now. She has a world title. If she winds up doing this rematch, or if she fights Natasha Jonas again, she realizes that boxing is very popular in the UK, and she'll gladly pack her bags and go over there to fight her there. In some ways, as the former champion who had this happen to her, you could argue that she deserves that. So we'll see what happens. You know, what money talks, like everything else, Chris, and every other business. So we'll see what happens. But I do think that if they fight again, they'll find a place for it in the UK. Although I know one of the things that I was told why there wasn't a natural setting for it in the UK
No.
because of where Sandy Ryan is from. There's not like an arena that makes sense for them to do it there. And I think the closest arena is in Nottingham. And then the way it was explained to me, and I don't know a lot about like, you know, UK neighborhood rivalries and all, but supposedly a fighter from Derby wouldn't be welcome in Nottingham. There's a big rivalry between them, and Nottingham is the arena in Nottingham where Carl Froch and others have fought
Right.
is the biggest arena near where she lives, and so that's not really an option. But they could do it. So, you know, I'm not saying they need a stadium necessarily or anything like that, but you know, a real arena, they could find a place over there for it. And you know, if they're looking to do right by Sandy Ryan based on what happened, maybe that's the way to go. But then if you're Mikaela Mayer, you have, as we discussed before, she has other options, and now she has the leverage after she finally gets the nod in one of these very, you know, close fights that